Roman coins when they occupied Great Britain. This one is 177 to 92 AD. It's extra 5. Well, let's see, 170. We better have that 192. And the next one is Septimius Severus, 193 to 211 AD. It's a denarius, very rare. Augustus Britannia. The obverse is a portrait, and this reverse is Victoria. Victoriae Britannia. And the next one is of Septimius Severus' son, Caracalla, also a silver denarius, 198 to 217 AD. Augustus Britannia. It has the name of the moneyer on it. And Aegitus seated left. The next one is a silver coin, denarius, the same as the others, of Geta, the younger son of Septimius Severus, 209 to 212 AD. Oh, I can't read all of these things to you. But anyway, the story is that Septimius Severus was a Roman monarch who died in York, England at the age of 80. He died in bed, which is very unusual for Roman emperors. And he left the empire to his two sons, Caracalla and Geta. And Caracalla got there first and killed Geta, so that he had it all by himself. Well, those are all Roman British coins. The second row is one of Septimius Severus. It's a silver denarius, extra fine. And the second one of his Empress Julia Domna. Her coin is dated 193 to 211 AD. Well, same as his. And the third coin is of Septimius Severus. It's also a denarius, but it's strictly a Roman coin. And the fourth one is a Parthian coin, or rather a Roman coin commemorating Septimius' victory over the Persians. It's a drachma, very fine, and the planchet is very oval, and it should be round so that the bust is cut off. Okay, the third coin on the third row is a debased,
That's good.
supposedly silver coin of Rome. They ran into the same thing we did. They ran out of credit and whatnot and started making their coins out of anything they could scratch up. So
where are we now?
This is called an Antoninianus. It is a portrait coin of Gordianus Pius, and the reverse is it reads Felicit Temp.
Well,
That's 238 to 244 AD. And then the next one, the fourth coin in the third row, is of also an Antoninianus, which replaces a denarius. It's the Philip the First. Obverse is a portrait, and reverse is the she-wolf and twins, Romulus and Remus. And that's how we happened to buy that coin, is because Mama wanted to get the wolf and the twins.
they really had them then, huh?
Yeah.
On that by that year.
That
yeah.
really started our collection.
You wonder where
So
all those
we-
legends, when they really started documenting them.
Well, that goes way before Caesar.
Mm.
The next is a Sestertius of Philip I. It's a very good portrait on that. And the second in the fourth row is of Helena. It's a bronze, Roman Empire, mother of Constantine the Great. It's a portrait on the obverse, and the reverse is Helen standing, 305 AD. The next is of Constantine the Great, about 317 to 323 AD. It's a portrait coin. The obverse is a bust of Constantine, and the reverse is Jupiter standing with the eagle at his foot.
Well, Dad, I think we've got these pretty well marked on the coins themselves. I'm just wondering if we might just point to their
Yeah,
position on the
sure.
chart, and if you have any historical comment about them,
Good.
that might save your voice. You've been going about 2 hours and some minutes now.
Okay, the fourth coin, the fourth row, is Constantine the Great. It's a phallus, a bronze coin, very good portrait. The final row are gold coins of the Byzantine era of the Roman Empire. There are two solidi, one's a semisis and one tremisis. The first is of Justin II, it's a solidus, about 565 to 78 AD. The second is also Justin II. And the third is Justus II, that's the semisis. And the fourth one is the tremisis, and it's of Justinian I. I couldn't get a full set of the same emperor. Now, in those days, we didn't use the decimal system. They used it by twelfths. That's why you have 12 hours in a day and a dozen eggs and whatnot. So a half, a solidus, was a semisis, and 1/3 was a tremisis. And the solidus was the coin paid to a mercenary for 1 month in the army in those days, and not the other way around. The word soldier came from the coin.
Is that right?
Yeah, and then we have
How much do
another
the soldiers get paid?
1 solidus. And here we have another set of solidi. We have King Heraclius, one with a beard and one without a beard. His date is around 610 to 641 AD. And then we have one semisis and one tremisis for the same emperor. Then we have 5 blank spaces, and at the bottom of the page we have 3 coins. A bronze of Ptolemy the Fourth, which is a very heavy bronze coin, about similar to a sestertius. And we have a silver coin of Ptolemy the 13th, who was unlucky enough to be the brother and the husband of Cleopatra, dated 81 to 52 BC. It's a tetradrachm, a Greek classification. And then we have a bronze of Valentinian, which is inconsequential. Then on the next sheet, we dive into the Middle Ages. The first coin is France, 768 to 814 AD, Charlemagne. It's not a portrait coin. It has a cross and an inscription on the front and an inscription on the back. Then we have one of Louis the Pious, Charles the Bald, Louis II on the top row. And then the second row is Charles the Simple in the first space. These are all French coins, Carolingian coins. We don't have any of the Capetians. The next jumps to England, and Ethelred II, who was king of Northumbria. It's a skeet, S-C-E-A-T.
When do we start running into our relatives?
Pretty quick, right now, in fact.
What,
He was-
the Ethelred one?
Yeah, but a different Ethelred. This Ethelred is the year 841 to 849. And we've got another Ethelred, which is 978, so it's a long ways apart. Then we come into Alfred the Great, who was the first one of the English or Saxon kings who are numbered among our ancestors. His years are 872 to 901 AD. It's from the Canterbury Mint. It's choice, extra fine, very rare. The inscription on 2 lines means Direvald Mo. That means the man who made it. The classification is a penny, and an English penny in silver at that time was equal to a denarius of Rome or a drachma of Greece. The next one is of Ethelred II, whose reign was 979 to 1016 AD. Also a Canterbury Mint, extra fine, a penny. It's a short cross type. Now this is the first coin with a portrait. The obverse is a portrait of Ethelred. The inscription Ethelred Rex. Reverse is Godric Macon of Canterbury. The third row is Ethelred II. It's a long cross type of penny, very fine, 978 to 1016 AD, and it has various inscriptions. Then we have 2 coins of Canute. He's the Dane who killed Ethelred II and married his widow. But our descent is through Ethelred is by his first wife and not through his second. Then the fourth coin in this row is a commemorative halfpenny minted in 1792 of Coventry, with a Lady Godiva on the obverse, riding her horse and an elephant on the back. The next row is William the
What year is Lady Godiva there, Dan?
This is a commemorative of 1792. She was at the same time of Alfred the Great and William the Conqueror and whatnot. Then our next row is William the Conqueror. A penny. These are all these are portrait types, and they have various inscriptions. We have one of William the Conqueror, and another one of him of the Exeter Mint, the first of the Salisbury Mint. The third coin is Henry the First, and the mint at Bury St. Edmunds, and then of Henry the Second, and then of King John the First, then Henry the Third, and Henry the Third, another penny, and then of Edward the First, and then we go to the sheet 4. I guess it's 4 or 5 or whatever, last one, 4 or 5, it's 5. The first is Edward the First, a different penny. Loch Doon hoard, this came from. And the next is Edward the Second. And the third one, these are only 3 coins in this sheet across. The third one is Edward the Second from the Canterbury Mint. The second row is a penny of Edward the Third. And the second coin is tuppence of Edward the Third. It's a bronze. And the third coin is a French coin of Geoffrey the Second. It's a denier. It doesn't have any significance. And the third row is a coin of Henry the Sixth. It has none either. It's a bronze. It's a good portrait type and a good coin, but it doesn't mean anything to us. And the middle coin is Maundy money of Queen Anne.
What does that mean?
One day of the year, the monarch has to wash the feet of some of his subjects and give them some money. And this is the money that they give him. It's silver, and there are 4 little coins of different sizes, all of Queen Anne. The last...
Did they really do that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they did. I don't know if they still do it or not. But they did for quite some time. The date of Queen Anne is 1702 to 1714. And the third coin in that row is of King George III, who was the last king of the United States. And then the fourth row, there are 2 British sovereigns, one of Queen Victoria and one of King Edward VII. And the third one is a half sovereign of Edward VII. And the last coin of all is a Venetian ducat. It is so absolutely good, it's called a fleur de coin. Its date is 1423 to 57. And that is all of the coins in this folder.
Well, what do you hope will happen with those things in the future? What do you want, Phil? What do you think we ought to concentrate on to fill in on there?
Well, I would go after the Capetian King, see if you can line up the... first of all, I would try to fill in the Saxon kings, because there are a lot missing in there. You can find which ones they are in the British Museum catalog, the CB's catalog.
Who were some of the famous Saxon kings?
Well, Alfred the Great was the first, and Ethelred the second was the last. Well, there was...
Did you have a favorite?
No, you have to watch out in selecting them, because there are a lot of brothers succeeded brothers, and maybe uncles or whatnot, and you have to get our dynasty. Well, we have them all listed in the charts, but we don't have, well, we do have the French too, if you want to dig them out, but there's so many ways of going, you don't know whether you're getting the right ones or not. But there are charts that show who were the French kings right down the alley.
You didn't tell very much about who you were descended from.
No, I didn't. Well, is it on?
Yep.
Our royal line of descent Our latest one in England was Edward III. We're descended from him by 3 of his sons, Edmund, Lionel, and John, and by at least 5 of his grandchildren. And our various lines go into the British royalty line at other places like Henry III, Edward III, Henry I, and whatnot, which would bypass Edward III. But they're like spider webs when you get back there. You can go about any place you want to. And then we also go into the Scottish kings, beginning with St. David, through his son Henry, Prince of Scotland, and also William. I think William was a king of Scotland.
Well,
And
if we were related to Henry I, we had to be related to Henry II, right?
well, wouldn't be descended necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back in up above, you might not be descended from their descendants.
Mm-hmm.
You might be a collateral line that runs around the outside and joins up above. But for the most part, they do all come back in. And in the French line, the last French king was Louis IX, who was our ancestor. Of course, you're related to a lot of them. Now, I have a book, The Plantagenet Dynasty, and it begins with Elizabeth Plantagenet. Well, that particular Elizabeth is a niece of the Elizabeth who was our ancestor. So whoever was on her Plantagenet side, all of those are ours, and probably on the other half of the chart, we'd get at least all of 1/4 and maybe half of the other quarter. So once you get into royalty, you practically get them all, and that means French and Spanish and even Hungarian, Slovakian. So you can make yourself happy just digging around and who were your ancestors. Now, John of Gaunt was first married to Blanche, the Duchess of Lancaster, and that's where he got his money. He became Duke of Lancaster. He himself didn't have very much until he married her, and she died in the plague. And then there's quite a space when he wasn't married to anybody, and he finally married Constanza, the Queen of Spain. And they had one daughter, I think, Isabel. And she was the grandmother of the Isabella who was married to Ferdinand, who sponsored Columbus. And then she died, and he married Catherine, who had been his concubine. And he had a common law, and actually it was a common law wife, a morganatic, because at the time he was a widower, he couldn't marry her. But she was his common law wife and bore his children. I think 5 children. And then Edmund of Langley had children who were ours, and he was married to Spanish queen or kingly line and royal lines. And Lionel, Duke of Clarence, I think he was. I think his was the Mortimer claim to the throne. At this time, when Edward III died and Richard II succeeded to the throne, there was a question about whether he should have been or not. And then eventually, when Henry IV, the son of John of Gaunt, deposed him, and you see Richard II seized all of Henry's property. And then when Henry came back to England, he was away in the Holy Land or someplace. When he came back to England, found out that he'd been disinherited when his father died. He got rid of Richard II right now, and he became Henry IV, and got his property back, incidentally. But at that time, there was a lot of feuding about who was supposed to be king and who wasn't. It ended up in the War of the Roses between the Lancastrians and the Duke of York's people. And it finally wasn't settled until Henry VII became king, because he was both the Lancastrian and the Yorkish line, the same as we are.
But we broke off ahead of
Yeah.
that. Before
But for the grace of God, you might have had to have been Queen of England right now yourself.
So there.
So there.
Well, let's call it a day. You got any parting shot you want to tell your ancestors, Bob?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty well.